Have you ever dreamt of climbing through the ranks, seeing your name among the Immortals and Radiants, but felt like the low-elo swamp keeps pulling you down? Believe me, you are absolutely not alone in that feeling. In fact, I was in that same position myself when I started playing Valorant. And just like the countless numbers of aspiring players I've guided through my Immortal Roadmap Program, you too have the potential to soar through those ranks. Hey guys, it's Konpeki here, and in this video, we're not just going to talk, we're going to dive deep. We'll uncover 13 of the most common low-elo mistakes that are holding you back. For our first low-elo mistake, it's something simple yet important to adjust, and that's properly clearing your corners when scaling around the map. While clearing corners is one of the most essential steps when planning to take space across the map, it's often missed in the rush and chaos of Valorant. So why do so many players mess this up? Because most low-elo players tend to half clear. That means you flick your crosshair on the area you're clearing without committing to each clear, which leaves you exposed to tucked-in enemies. Even if it does feel tedious at first, especially during fast sight hits, there's a simple solution. When you're executing into any new space where you aren't sure exactly where the enemy is, imagine an enemy behind your crosshair every time you clear that area of the map. For example, if you're taking elbow control on Sunset as an attacker, many defenders like to hide in corners or off angles to catch you by surprise. So if you or your teammates haven't cleared each corner, peek with the confidence that someone could be hiding there. And even if someone isn't in these areas, it gives you the confidence to continue peeking into the site and eliminate the possible areas defenders could be. You should do this the majority of the time, unless your teammates or some sort of utility have certainly cleared the angles you would be worried about when scaling. And if you aren't sure if they properly cleared those angles, take a quick glance at the radar to see exactly what everyone is clearing when you're scaling. And if you want to reach Agent Mastery to compete at the highest level, like our student TMS who recently hit Radiant, and Zay who hit 900 RR Radiant in EU, then look no further than the Immortal Roadmap Program. IRP is for serious players like you who want hands-on help from world-class coaches to perfect their gameplay. So if you're tired of feeling lost in your games and you're tired of having to rely on luck just to get good teammates, use the link below to book a call with me or one of our coaches to see if you qualify for our 500 RR in 10 weeks money back guarantee. While I briefly mentioned utility for clearing, there's another issue low elo players struggle with when using utility. I see this all the time. Players dumping their utility like it's confetti or holding onto it like it's gold. But neither mindset helps you win. It's almost like they're saving it for a highlight reel that never happens. The truth is, utility should always serve one core purpose, and that's to help you win fights. So to avoid falling into this trap, here's a simple rule you can follow. Only use utility if it helps you take or win a gunfight. That's it. Ask yourself, is this flash, molly, or recon helping me push, isolate a fight, or secure space for a teammate? If not, then just hold on to it. For example, let's say you're playing Gecko on Sunset. You don't need to dump your entire kit every time you want to push a site. Your flash can blind an angle and force movement, while wingman can clear or even plant. But your molly? That might be better saved for a post-plant or retake scenario where space denial matters a lot more. Just think about what helps you shoot better, then save the rest of your utility for when it really counts. But how can you even make smart utility decisions if you're completely blind to what's happening around the map? That's where the next tip about your minimap and audio come in. Most players treat the minimap like it's just some decorative wallpaper, and that's a huge missed opportunity. After all, what's the point of using your utility right if you don't know where the enemies even are? Without paying attention to those crucial steps, not only will you miss out on some free kills, but it may also mean that there could be gaps in your setup, which causes you to lose valuable rounds. But what kind of information should you look out for on the minimap? There are two things. First off, where's your teammate positioned? And if you notice any gaps in a certain part of the map, then you either need to let your teammate know about it or simply fill in that gap yourself. And then next is vision cones. Valorant allows you to see what all your team sees via vision cones. So for example, if your team isn't the best at communicating, which let's be real, happens a lot in ranked, given an Immortal and Radiant, you'll be able to see whenever they're smoked as their cone will disappear or become circular shaped similar to smoke. And another big thing to look out for is audio cues. Made popular in pro play, audio traps are unbelievably broken, especially in low elo play. For example, say your Jett wants to peek a main on Sunset. Your Jett sits in elbow, and once they hear footsteps, you throw the flash and your Jett racks up the kills. There are so many different possibilities and ideas you can use with this, so put on your thinking cap or watch a pro VOD and try them with your duo in your next ranked games. Now, once you've tuned into the flow of information, your next job is to make it count. And that starts with how you fight alongside your team. Let's talk about one of the most underrated habits that separates good teams from chaotic ones, failing to trade effectively. Trading is one of the simplest ways ways to turn even bad rounds into winnable ones, but it only works if you and your teammates are actually supporting each other. At its core, trading means this: if one of you goes down in a fight, the other instantly punishes the enemy for it. It's basically a one-to-one exchange, and it doesn't have to be instant. If one of you goes down and the other secures a kill soon after, that's still considered a trade. But what we're going to focus on is trading together. Why is it so important for low elo players to get a grasp of this? Well, without this concept, it means that you're giving the enemies the advantage to possibly win the round. Depending on what agents you're playing, your utility could be vital to winning the round. For example, if you're the smoker and you die, then the round becomes a lot harder to win. So even just evening out the numbers to a 4v4 can make a huge difference with a trade. But even if your team's trading is on point, it all falls apart if you get greedy when you shouldn't. So for this next tip, stop overextending or overpeaking without backup. You've seen it happen before. You get a pick, adrenaline kicks in, and suddenly you're swinging for more. And now you're dead. We all know what that means, and all of us are guilty of it. But in low elo, this is a must-learn skill that's holding you back. The question is, how do we stop it? As simple as it might sound, not peeking in a post-plant scenario might sound easy, but you need to actually drill it into your mindset. What might help you get into this mindset is paying attention to what ultimates your team might have or what utility is on the bomb already. If your entire team swings and dies and your Brimstone is left with their ultimate in a 1v3 scenario, your chances of winning that round almost zero. On the other hand, if you didn't overpeak and delay the post-plant for your Brimstone, then you've almost guaranteed a round win. If you feel like you have no other choice to swing, for example, the enemies know where you and your teammates are playing, you can try to coordinate a double swing or a flash peek. Dry swinging alone won't win you the round, not in low elo, and not even in Radiant. So unless you turn into Prime Aspas, this won't happen. If solo plays are constantly in rounds, maybe it's time to stop playing alone and start building setups that make the enemy's life hell. Which brings me to the sixth mistake, which is not holding crossfires. Crossfires are one of the oldest tricks in the book and one of the deadliest when done right. A crossfire is when you and a teammate cover the same angle from different positions. If an enemy walks into both of your sightlines, you'll both have the chance to kill them more easily. Even if the enemy peeks and kills one of you, unless you whiff horribly, then you should still be able to trade the kill. One of the most common and well-known crossfires is Under Heaven and Graffiti on Haven. But why is it important to play in these angles? If you play in crossfires, it allows you to trade your teammates easily and close out rounds more consistently. And playing safe often isolates two 1v1s, and you could lose both. So it's important to note that it's not the best idea to play in these angles if you aren't sure where the enemies can be or have no flank watch. If you're sure that no one can flank or the enemies are in CT, for example, then this is a great way to close that round and get that juicy RR. Now, you could have the perfect crossfire, but if you're sitting on an unused ultimate round after round, you're also leaving free wins on the table. Which brings me to the seventh mistake, not using agent ultimates at impactful moments. Let's be honest, too many players treat their ultimate like a rare treasure, saving it for the perfect moment that never comes. We gotta stop this. You don't win games by saving ults, but you win them by using them when it counts. But why do so many low elo players hesitate to use their ult in the wrong rounds? Well, finding the perfect round to use your ult can be almost impossible. Depending on the agent you're playing, using your ult as soon as you can get it can be much better than simply waiting. Like we discussed earlier, if it's a 2v2 and you're against an eco in a retake scenario, it's better just to use your breach ult to win now than to save it for a full buy that you might never win. So it's actually okay to be trigger happy with your ult. Your ult will come back, but being in a scenario to win a round might not. And those rounds could be the difference between you losing and winning the game.
Yes! Oh my god, let's freaking go! Let's freaking go!
So once you start converting rounds with your ults, the next layer of mastery is controlling tempo, and that's where most players fall flat in low elo. The eighth mistake is not changing the pace enough. No matter how good your aim is, if your rhythm stays the same, enemies will start dancing around it. If you don't change up your pace, it makes you predictable. When you change the pace of the round following a few very slow and defaulty rounds, the enemies will have become accustomed to possibly over-rotating. By showing yourself early on in the round, you'll be able to catch the enemies off guard and find gaps in their setups to exploit. So using strats such as faking and contact plays are extremely underrated in low elo, as many players expect you to simply rush fast or play around the map. Over-rotating is an issue that even Immortal 3 and Radiant players suffer with. So if you feel like you might have an opportunity to change the pace or catch the enemies off guard with a fake, then give it a go. I've won so many rounds by simply changing up the pace, and so can you. Now, if you've ever felt like your performance is a coin toss, for example, you're cracked one game, then lose the next, this next ninth mistake is probably exactly why. You don't need to play every agent to rank up. You just need to be comfortable on one. Comfort wins games. Just look at Exter. This guy climbed to high Radiant, playing a tight pool, and mastered everything about Yoru. That consistency is what helps you climb, not switching from Jet to Sage to KO every other match. But once you figure out the role you enjoy and are most comfortable on, finding an agent within that role is very easy. Once you find the agent you prefer, consistency and wins will come naturally as a result. For example, if you're playing Jet one game and a Sentinel the next, you're switching between two completely opposite playstyles. And this forces your brain to adjust every single game. And this leads to shaky starts and a messy mindset. But none of that matters if your mental is also a mess. So let's talk about how tilt silently ruins your climb. Here's something that most players overlook. Your biggest enemy isn't the opposing team or your teammates that are throwing. It's tilt. And trust me, no aim routine or strat can fix that if your mental's already fried. In your ranked games, tilt not only affects your mental, but it also impacts your decision making, aim, and movement as a result. Taking proper breaks, eating well, and staying mindful of your tilt triggers is a non-negotiable. Some examples of tilt triggers could be someone getting toxic early in the game, or someone constantly complaining about how the team plays. And yes, I understand it might be rough for the handful of comms that players might make, but if you can ignore the majority of the toxicity, and if you can pick out the meat off the bone to still pay attention to the useful comms, that trade-off is going to be worth it. And speaking of staying sharp in clutch situations, let's talk about one of the most overlooked aiming habits that silently sabotage your gunfights. Let's be real, half the times you whiff, it's not because of panic or nerves. It's because you're dragging your crosshair through a spray instead of resetting it properly. But how do you practice this so you become unkillable? Load into the range and head over to this target board. Click the 10 meter and bot sign. Aim your crosshair at the head of the bot and move side to side. You can counter strafe using the D and A keys on your keyboard. Once you get into a rhythm, add a burst in between those strafes. Practice this for as long as you want, but make sure you're doing damage to the bot. And of course, landing your shots is one thing, but not knowing how to stay focused on an angle is another skill that could be holding you back. One moment, you're locked in, not even blinking, but the next, you've zoned out on an angle and boom, you're out of the round before you can even react. I guarantee if you felt like you died on an angle you were holding, you would notice that you're simply not doing anything to keep yourself focused. So to prevent this, there are two methods I recommend. The first one is that you move side to side so it keeps your brain locked in on an angle, and if you do prefer to simply stand still and hold the angle, you can even occasionally wiggle your crosshair. Wiggling your mouse will allow both your brain and hand to stay focused on the task at hand and allow you to focus more on the angle. Personally, for me though, I prefer to just jiggle peek around the angle that I'm holding. That way, even if I am caught off guard, I'll be moving back into cover. And if you think sitting in the same spot is a problem, wait until you realize how predictable you've become across multiple rounds. Let's wrap up the video with a mistake that's subtle but deadly. You've stopped being unpredictable. And in ranked, that's a recipe for getting pre-fired or dumped with util. If you're playing the same anchor spot every round, you're asking to get cleared. But fixing this is actually pretty simple. If you're holding a site on defense and you stick to the same positions each time, then the enemies will know exactly where they need to put their util to clear you out. And that only puts your team at a disadvantage, but also makes your chances of winning the round considerably lower. You might even start to notice some gaps in the enemy's util after a few rounds. So exploit that as much as you can, as adapting to how the enemies play is something every player looking to escape the depths of low elo needs to focus on. So changing things up, such as pushing up close or holding a crosshair with your teammate, is a great way to keep enemies guessing. Being unpredictable, reading the game, staying sharp, it all adds up. And if you put everything we covered today into action, low elo won't be able to hold you back much longer. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching.